Wishwa, it's an online platform for social champions, for change makers, everyday change makers that we see around us, who have put decades of work, of their lifetime, their earnings, into making a difference, to serve others, and to make our world a better place.
Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to WishwaTalks. My name is Trishan. Thank you all for attending today's event. For those of you who have attended a WishwaTalk before, a warm welcome back. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, here's a little bit about us. WishwaTalks is a space to expand the horizons of your mind. Every webinar, we call experts from different domains to discuss and examine opinions, issues, problems, and perspectives. Each webinar is an interactive session where we all walk away with more respect for each other and a deeper understanding of the topic at hand. If you miss a session, please visit our YouTube channel or our website for a full library of past WishwaTalks on interesting topics. Today on WishwaTalks, we will be discussing a very crucial topic: importance of comprehensive sexuality education, CSE in short. Our speakers for today's WishwaTalks are Sanya Mehra, Rishi Talwar, Pankti Gohil, and Neti Ranjan, and they will lead us through the session in just a few minutes. Rishi and Sanya are the founders or managing directors of Torchbearers Foundation. Neti and Pankti are the core consultants. Torchbearers Foundation is a non-profit organization that works with people across age and gender in the sphere of public health systems and criminal justice systems. They aim to prevent sexual and gender-based violence through education, increase the delivery of justice in cases of SGBV through our sexual assault DNA kits, evidence collection kits, improve the support given to the survivors of SGBV in India. Before we get started, I would like to inform our audience that our speaker will be taking questions from you after our main talk. So please leave your questions in the chat or raise hand, and we will allow you to ask for questions in person. I request everyone to turn on your webcam during the interaction part. Now, without further ado, I invite our speakers to begin today's WishwaTalks. Good morning, Sanya. Good morning, Rishi. Good morning, Pankti.
Good morning, Tishan. Thank you for the introduction. So I'm here with my team today, Rishi and Neti and Pankti, out of which Rishi, Pankti and I will be taking you through the presentation. So hi, everyone. Thanks for taking time out to join us today. We are the Torchbearers Foundation. We founded Torchbearers Foundation in 2020 in response to the increasing rates of sexual and gender-based violence in India. So I'm sure as you guys have all seen in the news, in articles, and even in the community around us with the awareness that has come around in the last few years through movements like Me Too. The cases of sexual and gender-based violence, harassment, and other things are increasing rapidly in our community. And we felt like it was our responsibility to do something about that. So through the Torchbearers Foundation, we have decided to take a preventive and responsive approach to address sexual and gender-based violence in India. So we're comprised of what we call the response wing and the prevention wing. So I'll give you a little brief about the response wing, although we won't be covering it in our presentation today. So the response wing concentrates on providing sexual assault evidence collection kits, which are DNA kits, to medical institutions in India that are run by the government. So this is an effort to increase the yield of DNA and promote a thorough DNA investigation when it comes to crimes of sexual assault. Because as we know, and as it's been referenced time and time again, DNA is the strongest way to get a conviction when it comes to crimes of sexual abuse. However, in our country, we don't have a standardized operating procedure or a response to collecting that DNA, which is being followed throughout the country. So the response wing supplies ASHA kits, which are aimed at promoting the collection of DNA and prevalence of justice in the criminal justice system. The second wing, which we have, is called the prevention wing, which is what we will be concentrating on today. One of the core aspects that we cover through the prevention wing is called comprehensive sexuality education, which is something Rishi and Pankti will cover thoroughly through the call. And it is aimed at improving the future generations in the sense that we want to equip them with knowledge, we want to equip them with information through education, which promotes gender equality. Sexual and gender-based violence is deep-rooted in gender inequality, and that's something that we want to address. So our vision is to address sexual and gender-based violence in India through policy changes in these two categories when it comes to the prosecution of sexual assault, as well as education regarding sexuality and ground action. And through the awareness that we create, we want to catalyze change. And we're very, very excited to have you all here today with us to join us in that journey. So I'll hand it over to Rishi now. Thank you.
Thanks, Sanya. So I'll be talking a little bit about what exactly sexual and gender-based violence is. So sexual and gender-based violence is violence that is directed at a person because of their sex or gender. It involves coercion or forcing them to do something against their will. The reason we're focusing on sexual and gender-based violence is because what we can see from the data and statistics available is that it disproportionately affects minority groups and minority communities. And that's the reason we have chosen to focus on this area, because as we'll see through the presentation, the kind of, I mean, I'm sure most people are already aware of, what's happening in our country and even globally, but we'll be covering it in some detail. I do want to give a trigger warning over here as well, because some of the content that we are covering can be quite distressing. So if anybody feels uncomfortable or triggered or finds it overwhelming, please feel free to step away from the presentation if you need to. Of course, if anything like that does happen at any point of time, please feel free to send us a message and we can help share some resources in order to cope and, in order to help settle with what's going on. So with that, I want to come to the ground reality of the situation that we are seeing in India. It is horrendous, the kind of statistics, the kind of news reports that we come across on a daily basis. Because we are working in this field, because we are working in this area, we also have notifications that we get whenever such kind of news pops up, and it's multiple stories, multiple news articles on a daily basis. Some of the statistics, I'm not going to read out everything that's on the screen. Please feel free to read it yourself and go through the material on the slide. But I'll maybe focus on a couple of things just to highlight what we are talking about. And what we can see is, one of the statistic is that on an average in 2021, a crime against a woman is registered every 74 seconds in India. That is just, it's horrendous. I don't know how else to even put it. Yeah, so things are not okay, and that is the reason we've chosen to focus on this and make this our area of work. One of the other things to cover sexual and gender-based violence is that it does not look violence in general. It does not focus on even minority groups such as trans people or men in the queer community. And in fact, even legally, there are no measures to report rape or sexual assault for any gender other than women. That is how, I mean, the laws are in our country. So things are pretty drastic, pretty dire, and need attention, need more effort and work from the public, from the government, from every sector that we can kind of think of. As we can also see, the rates of crimes against women are steadily increasing. There was a drop from 2019 to 2020 because of lockdown and everything that was happening because of COVID, which in itself was a pretty traumatic event, I think, globally. But interestingly, even during lockdown, there were multiple news reports of how domestic violence had increased, how, and if you do a simple Google search, you'll come across more than enough evidence and data that is being reported across the country and perhaps globally as well. But yeah, so the overall crime against women dropped in 2020, which includes other crimes other than domestic violence, but domestic violence actually spiked for women as well as children. And I'll cover that in a later slide. But as we see in 2021, the rates actually surpassed even 2019. So it's like as soon as as soon as lockdown ended, it's like we've suddenly, crossed the previous threshold as well. So yes, all is not well. Now, looking at sexual and gender-based violence against children, part of this is covered under the POCSO law, which is the the protection of children against sexual offenses. That covers the sexual offenses and sexual crimes that are based on sexual violence against children. This is again a very, very horrendous. The kind of statistics that are and the kind of reports that are coming out are extremely, extremely distressing. These are some news clips that we have highlighted, even in the earlier slide and even on this slide. But these are the kind of statistics and data that is coming up. So one of the things that is quite striking is that in India, a child is sexually abused every 15 minutes. This is a report by the BBC based on government data. Most of our data and statistics that we have put on is from the National Crime Records Bureau and from news articles that are taken from trusted sources. Another article and headline which we wanted to focus on was the suicide of R.V. Malhotra, who was a student, I think a 16 or 17-year-old student in BPS in Delhi. And he ended up, he took his life by suicide because of bullying and harassment around his sexuality. So it's very, very distressing, the kind of things that are happening. I'm not going to read the rest of the content, but yeah, next slide. We can go to the next slide. So on this, again, we have some more statistics and data. The two things that I wanted to focus on this slide is that when we look at crimes against children, firstly, there was I think the one and only study that was done by the government was in 2007, according to which there were around, I think, 13,000 or so respondents across 13 states in India. Out of the respondents, these were all children, and out of the respondents, more than 50% reported some form of sexual abuse that they had endured. Some of the other data is also highlights that, 52%, almost 53% of the respondents that reported sexual abuse were boys and 47% were girls. So even this myth of how, boys don't face this kind of, or men don't face kind of abuse and violence is just that, it's a myth. Also, another thing that I wanted to highlight here was that most of the abusers, most of the perpetrators are actually known to the victims or the survivors of abuse and violence. They are either relatives or people that are in close proximity to the family or to the child. This has again been verified and is data that is consistent with bodies across the board that are working in this field. So this is the reason we kind of wanted to form torchbearers and work towards this goal of addressing these issues by increasing awareness and equipping people with an understanding of their own bodies, their own rights, their own, what kind of steps they can take. And education is a core tool as I see it in this effort. So we come to, what is comprehensive sexuality education? And comprehensive sexuality education is age and stage appropriate education for children and young people and for everyone, to be honest, because I personally know of many adults who can use some form of sex ed and there are multiple examples that I can state over here. but it's extremely important in understanding our own selves, our own sexuality, our biology, our rights, our that we have the right to say no, for example. So it doesn't cover just sex. It doesn't cover only what sex is and teaching about sex or permitting sexual activity. In fact, one of the things that we have seen is that in other countries where comprehensive sexuality education has been implemented, it actually delays the rate, it delays the age of sexual activity, and children and young people tend to be more cautious when it comes to protection, when it comes to safeguarding themselves. So if you can see the screen, these are some of the topics. This is a screenshot from our website. These are some of the topics that are covered in comprehensive sexuality education. It involves understanding concepts like gender, sexual orientation, marriage, violence and abuse, online safety, which is again a pretty important aspect which has come up in the last decade or more, where predators and predators are developing ways of seeking out children, of targeting children, and it's a dire situation. So some of the other things like boundaries and consent, how to set boundaries for yourself, how to communicate those boundaries, how to give consent, how to receive consent, how to say no to certain activities that may not be we may not be comfortable with. This is all in line. So there's not a generic kind of thing of, oh, this applies, it basically, CSE aims to target the individual and their own personal ethics, values and boundaries that are in line with their beliefs and worldviews. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Pankti for the rest of the presentation. And yeah, she'll take you through the rest.
Thanks, Rishi. Okay, I hope I'm audible to everyone. So we're gonna, so far, in the first 20 minutes of our session today, of our meeting today, we've learned a little bit about what we do at Torchbearers Foundation. And yes, we have gone through some pretty disturbing, distressing, but very real ground reality on sexual and gender-based violence against minority groups, against children. I am sure that this is, I mean, I'm not sure if how many of you were surprised by the news reports and the statistics that you saw today. In fact, sorry, I see someone's raising their hand. Can we hold off onto our comments and questions for in just another 15 minutes, we'll take it up. Okay. Yeah, when we started our work on this, it was quite disturbing to have to see these kind of news articles and to read about such reports on a daily basis. But we can't ignore it. And we do genuinely believe that, creating awareness, informing people, educating people is the way to reduce these statistics. We know, so we saw that the statistics are rising year by year. We also know that our nation, the government and everyone there are laws, there are certain responsive measures that are being put in place, such as they are increasing the number of street lights in certain areas, or there are more funds that are provided in response to if any incident of violence has occurred, right? However, we genuinely believe that to reduce the cases that are happening, I think that people need to become more informed and aware, right? And that's our attempt, and that's why we want to speak with you today as well about this. Before I go ahead, I have a couple of poll questions for you. I'm going to request someone from WishwaTalks to help us out with that.
We'll do it right.
Thanks.
Could you please approach the poll question?
Okay, let's take less than a minute to answer both of these questions. The first question is, growing up, or even now, even in your adulthood, do you have any questions or concerns about your body or your sexuality or any of the other topics that Rishi was talking about earlier? Anything which is related to even sexual health, anything related to communication with your partner, etc., that you wish you had someone to discuss, or you wish somebody had come and spoken to you about some of these things. And that's the first question. The second one being, have you ever received any form of sex education from any professional or any other reliable person, right? So not information. I know that most of us gather our information from the internet or by maybe talking to somebody we are comfortable with. But apart from that, did you receive any formal, semi-formal advice or guidance or knowledge about sex education? All right, I see only 30% of you have responded. Let's wait for another half a minute and then we can close the polls. Okay, I'm going to ask everyone to respond, and maybe if we can have at least 50% participation in the polls, we can then end the poll. Okay. Let's end the poll, and if you can share the results of the poll.
Sure.
All right, thanks. So as you see, we have a sort of a, all right, so the first question said 59% of you have said that no, you maybe did not have these questions or concerns while growing up, and maybe that's okay. Maybe I'm also wondering if there was not any safe space for you to also bring up these questions, or maybe, you thought that these are things that you figure out on your own, that you don't really need to have discussions with someone about it. But I also see 41% of you have said that, yes, you do have questions about, when you're growing up, be it related to puberty, or, your sexual experiences, or even your own sexuality, or what you prefer, what you not prefer, or even in terms of communicating with a partner about what you like, what you don't like. Is that even a topic that should be considered or discussed, right? We do have these questions when we've grown up, and it's a very natural part of being human to have these questions. It's very healthy to have these questions, and it's even and that's what we are hoping to do, to create a space where these questions can be asked and these concerns can be answered. Right. I also see that 65% of you have not received any form of sex education from any professional. Well, I also see 35% of you did. And I'm really glad that, that such a space was created. In fact, in our earlier, sessions, conversations with individuals, most of them, in fact, I think I can very easily say 80 to 90% of them did not have any formal sex education. I think that the kind of sex education we received was the 8th standard biology textbook, where we learned about the reproduction system and the first time that we saw those organs. And I think, or even maybe in school, maybe, all the girls were taken separately to be discussed about what periods are and given sanitary napkins, etc. So that's how limiting sex education has been in our country and in the education system. And we want to, I also want to say that the impact of the impact of lack of sexual education means that people are unaware, they are misinformed, they do believe all of these myths that exist about, if masturbation is harmful to you, or if you can get pregnant without actually having penetrative sex, etc. So all of those myths that are there, that's what happens when we don't have accurate or enough information about any of these topics. It also means that people do become quite shameful about it, in the sense that whenever somebody brings up such a topic, it's a very hush hush, like aisi baatein nahi kar sakte public mein, we can't really talk about all of these things, or even use the word sex. I'm wondering for many of us here, maybe this is the first time that the word sex has been used in such a setting, in a public setting like this, right? Otherwise, it's not something that we discussed in public. So when there is a lot of just not accurate information, lack of information about this, it also means that we are then becoming a part of society where there is a lot of stigma, where there is secrecy, which means that if any sort of violence or abuse is happening, nobody speaks up, whether it's the people involved or even if it's bystanders, people who are witnessing it happening, right? So this is, and I'm sure that this is something many of us can relate to, right? Like, how openly have we ever had conversations about any of these things, about gender, about sexuality, about sexual health, about violence, about abuse, right? I mean, in fact, we were just discussing yesterday amongst ourselves that I think that the only way which is sort of semi-acceptable in adults to talk about sex is through these dirty messages or non-veg jokes, if you may have heard, right? Which has a double meaning connotation. And so you see how there is a shame involved about that. It's known as dirty jokes or dirty messages. Why? Right? Why have we decided as a society that talking about sex or anything related to that becomes dirty all of a sudden? And that is what we aim to address through sexual education. I want to quickly show you just a couple of examples of what comprehensive sexuality education looks like, right? So we saw so many topics that I'll come to towards the end as well that Rishi was talking about. I want to take one example from there. Now, we all saw in the news articles that child sexual abuse is extremely rampant, right? One of the things that we discuss with children, with adults who are working with children or interacting with children is this: body safety rules, right? Teaching them my body, my rules, right? So here we really encourage them to say no, right? And I know that, when all of us grew up, or even right now, we sort of expect children to do things that we want, like, go and touch the feet of your grandparents, go and give your uncle a hug, when we really always tell children to go and do that. And if the children ever say no, they don't want to do it, or they throw a tantrum or whatever, whatever form which is not a yes, the response that adults give is that, hey, you can't be this rude, you can't be disrespectful, you have to do this because they are your elders, because they are your relatives. So that's really the opposite of saying that, that they should respect their bodies or they should respect their choice when it comes to their own body. And that's what we want to talk about. We want to teach them that say no if you're feeling uncomfortable. We want to teach them how does discomfort feel in their body, so that if anyone tries to approach them or engage with them in any kind of inappropriate acts, they can speak up. They know what they are feeling, right? We really believe in also teaching them the proper vocabulary, right? Not telling them that your penis means no. Let's teach them the proper vocabulary for your body, for your private parts, for your organs, so that they can speak up whenever if something inappropriate is happening with them. right? We teach them how to have a safety network in case something happens, in case somebody asks them to keep a secret, etc. We tell them that you don't have secrets from people within your safety network. So this is the kind of information that we really want, just one small piece of it, that we really want children to have, so that they know if they are going through any kind of abuse, so that they can speak up, right? Another such sort of form of education that we do believe in, and which Tanya also mentioned in the beginning, which is that a lot of violence and abuse is rooted in gender inequality. Right now, one of the ways that we want to address that is that let's really reflect on what we are teaching when it's boys or girls. What are we really teaching them? Are we teaching boys that, no, you can't cry, you have to be a man? So what they grow up learning is that they have to be the provider, that it's okay to be aggressive, that they can't express emotions because it's a sign of weakness. And on the other side, we are teaching girls to be submissive. We are teaching girls to be more tolerant. We are telling them to be the caretaker, or to be any of these words that you see in the images over here. And that's how these gender stereotypes, when the socialization happens in such a way during childhood, when they grow up, there is a lot of power difference between a male and a female. We know that, women are considered to be a minority group because of this power inequality. And because of that, there is an increase in, domestic violence, where usually, most cases, men is the abuser. And how in such cases also, most times women just suffer through for years, because that's what the conditioning has been, that they are taught to be tolerant, they are taught to listen to the man, to the husband, and even the fact that because of this, there's no there's no equality in even their education, right? Now I know that maybe a lot of us over here have not grown up in such an environment, and maybe all women that we know have gotten education. But most of India also resides in rural parts, where such inequality still exists, which means that most women even now are not financially independent. And when you're not financially independent, you end up depending on the man. So if you are in an abusive relationship, it's very difficult to get out of such a situation also. So this is how we want to create awareness, so that we can also eradicate gender inequality, which is sort of the root cause of all violence and abuse. Right now, this was just a couple of examples of how education, what education can look like when we talk about CSE. Apart from it, we also, a lot of the tools that we acquire through this kind of education is also about communication, about listening to your partner, about negotiation. Now, this for everyone involved, right? Not just for kids, or not just for women or a specific gender, right? This is the kind of general life skills that all of us can actually really use. Even decision making, or identifying abuse, identifying sources of help, challenging long-standing prejudices that we have about genders, about sex, etc. And at the very core of it, to protect and advocate for our own health and well-being, and for that of others, especially the minority groups, especially the children, and all of those. So, and just to reiterate what Rishi was also saying, I know that there are a lot of myths about sexuality education, but we do have, even if it's limited research, we do have research which consistently says that it actually doesn't mean that people start having sex more frequently or at a very early age. No, it's actually very delayed. It actually means that the person has the right information to choose which person they want to explore with, etc. right? So here is our little, I mean, we are really hoping that all of us over here who are interacting with children in any way, whether you are a teacher, whether you are a relative, whether you are a parent, we really urge you to, one, inform yourselves about what what some of these topics are, and two, talk to your children about it, whether it's in a big, I mean, at a school level or at any institutional level or at home. But we really do urge all of you to become more aware, to take this up, to talk more and more and more about it. All right, and I'm gonna end over there. I think we can open now for questions, but I'm gonna let Trishant take over. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Sorry,
so much, Panti. Yes,
Sorry,
please.
Prashant. I just wanted to add that we have a lot of resources on our website in case anyone is needing or wants to, go through information. We have articles, we have news, news articles, we have documentaries and various other resources that are available on our website. In case anyone wants to access it, please feel free. The information is shared on the screen now. Sorry, Trishant, you can take over.
Sorry, if I can just jump in between again.
Yes, please.
I just wanted to add in that please use and think of us as a resource as well. If you feel that you would want us to come into your child's school or into a space that you can help us create to have that conversation with them, whether they are children around the age of 5 to 8, whether you're talking about teenagers, whether you're talking about young adults, we would be happy to do that as well. So please keep that in mind. Thank you.
Um,
Thank you so much. I'd like to invite our founder, Mrs. Shivani Mulapuri, to continue the session.
Yeah.
Rashna.
Namaste. I'm Srivani. I would now like to request the audience to take 30 seconds to answer a poll for us. The purpose of this poll is to help us understand you a little better so that we can have topics curated to your requirement. You can also let us know in the chat box how you found out about WishwaTalks, and if you are a WishwaTalks subscriber, heard about it through friends or family, or found out about us through social media. I would like to express my gratitude to each of you who have joined us today with their presence and interactive and contribution to make this webinar a success. I extend my gratitude to our respected speakers, Sania Mehra, Rishi Talwar, and Pankti Goyal, for someone so young to pick up a topic such a sensitive topic. These days kids are like, oh, it's difficult, let's just move on with life. To see you three picking up such an important topic and at such a young age working towards it is something we're very proud of. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
While you spoke about all this, I wanted to hear, suppose we have 3-year-olds, different age groups, what would you suggest? What kind of communication should we give? Up to which age group should we do communication? And at different age groups, what kind of communications would you suggest for telling the children to be careful?
Okay. So I think that, talking to our children about any of these, I think starts from as early as maybe 1 year, 2 years. Like, I would want to ask you, at what age do we start teaching them that this is your eyes, that this is your nose, that this is your ears, right? It starts at that age, because that's where we also teach them that this is their private areas, that this is their genitals. So I think that information about their bodies, about what they are experiencing emotionally, mentally, socially, it starts from a very young age and it goes on until adulthood, I believe. So at whichever developmental age the child is at, accurate information about their social development, keeping all of these all of these stages in mind, we can provide them with such information. And we also have these resources on our website, which actually talks about what all information can you talk to at which age. So perhaps that resource can also help you with that.
Ma'am, have you posted your website in the chat box or something?
We do that.
Yeah. So are you saying that there are small videos which I can show the children at different age groups? Or is it just a list of what we should speak to them?
Sure. So there will be information in various forms. We may not have videos exactly for all age groups, etc. What we do really encourage is that the adult in their life become aware of these topics, and so that they can have a one-on-one conversation with the child. In the sense that, we can also show the child a video, etc. But children are very curious. So it'll be important that we can also have a conversation with them if they have any such questions for us. So yes, it will have resources in different formats that you can see what's most comfortable for you.
Yeah. And so would you like to collaborate with Wishwa to come out with these videos for different age groups? Because we are tied up with quite a few schools and we would like to show it to them.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can definitely have a conversation after this, and we'll be excited to do that.
Yeah. Another question is the movies which are coming out in the market, like Pushpa and all. I'm not there, and they're becoming such huge box office successes. And the kind of, I am not even clear why they are a success. And is it because of lack of illiteracy? And what is the impact of such movies on young adults?
I have the same question as you. I think all of us do. We don't know why such movies are created or released other than entertainment purposes. But we know that media is extremely influential, especially at a developmental age where they are easily impressed. So they are going to consume a lot of information that we get from movies, etc. Now, while we can't at an individual level really control what movies they release, they don't release, what we encourage is that if you know that your child has seen such a movie, or if you think you want to address it at a school level, it's important over there to then proactively talk about the scenes that they've shown in the movie, what it means, what it doesn't mean in real life, how what they are showing is actually harmful and not okay. Teach them, build empathy amongst our children so they can also identify that what they are watching on media is not accurate or even healthy, helpful information. So maybe that kind of dialogue can be entered into.
Hi. Sorry, I did want to jump in. Hi guys. I'm another member of Torchbearers. So when we do our workshops, we actually use a lot of these Bollywood references, like movies that are really popular, and sort of introduce this idea that, maybe what we are talking about today, that, for example, consent is important. And remember this movie that you really liked, actually, they don't really talk about consent in the same way that we are doing right now. So we like using those references and sort of giving an alternative view of looking at those. And that also can start a lot of conversations, which otherwise we don't really think of.
Okay. There's one question from Ms. Jyoti.
Namaste to everybody, all the participants and the panelists. And my earnest apologies, I have issues with my camera. I'm unable to switch it on. It is not a question. I would just like to put forth a small suggestion, something that I practice. I am a dance teacher. I'm a Bharatanatyam dancer and a teacher. I have a different approach when I teach my students. I'm very friendly with them. They, in fact, discuss a lot of things with me. And a couple of small kids of mine, they have more than 3 to 4 occasions they have said this to me. Hamare building mein ek uncle hai, wo achhe nahi hai. So, I really believe that God has instilled this software in every girl. They understand that something is amiss, but they don't know how to express it. So I prodded further and I asked them, क्या हुआ? आपको डांटते हैं, गुस्सा करते हैं, भगाते हैं? नहीं, ऐसा तो कुछ नहीं करते हैं, चॉकलेट वगैरह देते हैं, घर में बुलाते हैं, लेकिन वो अच्छे नहीं हैं. So this particular thing with regards to the same individual was said by 2-3 different kids. So what I did was, when their parents, when their mothers came to pick them up after the class, I just told them, देखो आपके बच्चे किसी ऐसे इंसान के बारे में ऐसे बोल रहे हैं, तो एक नहीं 2-3 सारे बोलते हैं, तो कुछ ना कुछ होगा ना, तो जरा आप प्लीज केयरफुल रहिए, जरा ध्यान रखिएगा इस बात पर. This is one thing I do. And the other thing is, I have a daughter. My daughter is now, by God's grace, doing fashion designing. But right from her childhood, my husband is not very comfortable discussing sexual issues and sexuality, etc. So I used to always tell him, if you're not comfortable telling her when she, because I feel, parents are the windows to our kids. You are the first stop of their queries, their questions. If you're not able to answer them, do not shoo them off saying that you don't need to know this at this age. No. Dilute the answer in such a way that they can understand it at that particular age. My daughter had asked me this once, Amma, your chest is very big. Why is not mine is not that big? So I told her, Bacha, you're very small. When you grow up, when you become 12, 13, your chest will also become big. So she was happy with it. The next question was, will it pain? So then I asked her, do your nails pain when they grow? No. So this is the natural procedure. It will grow. Then she was very happy, and you know what she told me? जब मेरा छाती बड़ा होगा ना, मेरे को अच्छे bra लाके देना. So I feel as parents, we need to really open up and discuss these things without an iota of shame. It is nothing to be. I tell my daughter, sex is not bad. Sex is not sin. However, if it is not practiced in the proper, circumference or framework, then it can be detrimental. It can have hazardous effects. I feel as parents, we need to become best friends of our kids so that they approach you with all their doubts with regard to any kind of sexual activity. I feel it is very important. Sometimes I feel more than children know, we need to educate parents on how to tackle sexual issues with their kids. Because what we do is, तुम्हारी उम्र में इसकी जरूरत नहीं है, तुम जाओ, हम तो तुम्हारी उम्र में सीखते ही नहीं थे. Agreed, but हमारी उम्र और थी, आज की. Yesterday my daughter has asked me, do you watch porn movies? So I told her, yes, I have watched it. Then she asked me, with whom? I told her, with my mother. And yes, it is a fact. And then she told me, when can I watch with you? I told her, beta, mere ko 1 saal aur dena so that I become more comfortable with you watching that stuff also. It is not healthy to watch it, but you should know what happens in that nonsense. So I feel parents need to open up, really. And thank you so much for giving this opportunity, and God bless you at Vishwa, each one of you. You are doing an awesome service. God bless you all. Thank you so much.
So I have a question here.
Yeah.
When the children are so curious and they want to see the private parts of adults, how do you deal with it? Because out of their curiosity, they want to see.
You're asking me this question?
Sure, you also could answer that.
What I did was, when we were abroad for 12 years, we have just relocated to Mumbai last October. So on one of the visits that we had here on vacations, there was a female cat in our house. She delivered her kittens. So I made my daughter see the process of delivery. And then she was around 8 or 9 that time, and she was pretty intrigued by looking at it. And she said, "Amma, itna taklif hota hai, bacha paida hota hai." So I told her, "हाँ बेटा होता है. इसीलिए कहते हैं कि माँ बाप को दुखी नहीं करते." That is one thing. And the other thing is, I told her, this is how a child is born in every mammal.
Okay.
So I have not hid anything from her. I tell her everything, so that she is able to take stock of situation whenever it is necessary, because we are living in a very volatile society these days.
No, thank you so much for sharing this with us. And, I think you brought up some really important points of adults first gaining the information and awareness themselves, and also comfort. Because, I remember even in school, and I've heard this from multiple people, even biology, often teachers, while covering, anatomy and sex, would be, tum apne aap ghar jaake padh lena, they would skip over that section, right? So being comfortable in talking about these topics without shame, without stigma, I think is extremely important. Also, obviously, parents, may not always have the information and be equipped to engage in this way. Obviously, because they are also not trained in this, right? They can give their life experience, which is extremely vital. But referring or accessing resources or, approaching professionals wherever required can also be really, really important. So having a set of, resources, which we'll be happy to share some material that can be accessed, but those kind of options are also available.
So to add to that, we also work with parents and adults because so for example, if a child is curious, they are just curious. The discomfort is coming from us because we
Absolutely.
know what connotation is added to, private parts. So when we are uncomfortable, the kids pick up on that and they figure out that, okay, this is a topic which is not comfortable with my parents or with other people. And that just adds to the curiosity, but they have no outlet left now. So which is why when we sort of like work with adults, we also try to look at that conditioning. That the kid is just asking question like they would ask that, okay, why is sky blue? We freak out and that gives them an additional message that, okay, there is something about this that is not fully okay. So the more we act casual and like what other conversations we are having, the more okay they'll also become. Which means that even if you want to give an answer of key, like this is a conversation that maybe we can have later, that's also okay. But when we freak out, that just adds a little bit more shameful and uncomfortable meaning to the whole conversation.
Just two quick things. I won't take much of your time. Just two. Jyotish here. One thing as parents, what we can do is if we are not comfortable discussing this with them, just buy time with them. Tell them, I don't know the answer, beta. I'll look it up and let you know. And then, work on how, make yourself comfortable in dealing with this. And the other thing, one small instance, my daughter was 8 years old that time. And we were, one request I have with all parents is when you're watching movie with TV with your kids, if you find any of this adult content coming on the screen being displayed, when the kids are watching, don't jump the channel. They get intrigued. Why my mother is changing the channel? Just treat it as normal. So during one of these days when we were watching Animal Planet, they showed zebras mating. So suddenly my daughter looked up at the screen and she told me, Amma, ye log jhagad rahe hain. So then I said, nahi, inki dosti ho rahi hai. So then her question was, aisi bhi dosti hoti hai? Then I said, haan, jab aisi dosti hoti hai na, to ek chota zebra paida hota hai. So then her answer was, oh, acha, aisa hai kya? To theek hai. And then she went about playing around. I think we need to buy time with them. Do not shoo them away. Please, as parents, don't tell them you don't need to know it. They need to know every bit of it. With that, I thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'd like to ask Atmadeep to unmute himself, and we have a question for her.
Yeah, thank you so much. And my pronouns are he, him. And firstly, when I heard Jyoti speaking, something that came into my mind, if she doesn't, again, if they don't mind gets me bringing this up, is that is it ethical to actually tell the parents that their kids had come to them saying that ye uncle bure hai? Because often the kid is then told कि ऐसा क्यों बोल रहे हो किसी के बारे में. Despite it having the right intention, I think there's a possibility it might backfire. So that way, I think we can reflect a bit on the approach that we take in revealing this information. And two, when again, when Jyoti mentioned pornography, why is pornography looked down upon? And why isn't there enough resources about ethical pornography that involves basically ethical pornography and also understanding things like kink, fetishes, etc. There isn't much resource on that, and why isn't that talked about? Because again, that would mean alienating a certain section of society, right? And so adding to that, I also on the same subject, recently Karnataka government banned condoms
Sir,
and contraceptive.
let us
Yeah.
stick to one question. Let that question be answered. Then you can go to the next question.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So the question on pornography, would you like to talk about?
Yeah, sure. So Okay, so when we look at pornography also, it is seen under the same stigma, the same shame as, sex being something dirty or something bad. And again, pornography, when we talk about pornography, there are nuances, right? Because a lot of pornography is not ethical pornography, where people are coerced, are forced, are, it can be a form of violence as well. So we don't want to encourage or condone violence and that kind of industry in that sense. But there are other options like ethical pornography, which involve adults who are consenting, who are, actors or porn stars who are paid and remunerated for their what the work that they are doing, which is any other form of work. Like sex work is as valid as any other form of work. So looking at ethical pornography, it's just that we don't have enough awareness, and also it's more effortful, right? Finding ethical pornography, finding sources which are doing it in this way. So there's nothing wrong with porn as long as it's ethical, as long as it is not coercive or abusive or violent towards anybody, as long as no one is getting harmed.
At what age group can they actually see children?
So that is a tricky question, because I think most kids right now with access to internet have access to porn. So I wouldn't say that, okay, after this age, it's okay. I think it's more important to have conversations with children about sex, about porn, about ethical porn, also about how pornography often is a fictional creation. Right? Because many a times when we are viewing porn also, it's like, I mean, imagine as a 13-year-old, if I'm looking at porn and I'm looking at one, man engage in sex for, I don't know, hours with multiple people, that is the impression I'm also getting, like, okay, this is what sex is supposed to look like, which is not what happens in reality. Right? So having these kind of conversations and distinguishing what are you seeing in porn and how that is fiction, how that is, that maybe that one scene has been taken over multiple takes. So those kind of conversations, and again, empowering them that, okay, look, if you have questions or if you are curious about this, you can come to me and we can talk about it, and we can kind of, normalizing and creating a safe space for kids to share these kind of thoughts. I mean, that's what I would say to that. But if anyone else has anything to add.
Just have like one more input at this is also that, when we look at porn, like there's a lot of emphasis on sex, but what gets sort of ignored is the desire behind it, which is what prompted them to go there in the first place. And the second bit is, if you look at it's also an act of intimacy. All of these things are usually absent from the porn that people get access to, and then the main thing sort of gets lost in that aspect. So when we're talking to kids, it's okay to actually normalize the desire that prompted this particular action or this particular like path, and then having a conversation around that, why this particular thing has these many pitfalls, like, this is what you're exposed to, and this could be the disadvantages of it, and this is what's happening. So when we're coming from a place of understanding this is where the desire is, that's what's normal, and what else is sort of happening, which we probably wouldn't want you to look at it, like believe in itself, then that's also a good space to have, because we are not really demonizing their action. We're not really putting a lot of moral obligation on them. We're understanding where it's coming from.
There's a question, someone saying there are instances where children have been disturbed psychologically after witnessing. Are you referring to porn or?
Yeah. May I speak?
Yes.
This is Zenobia. I'm a counselor, and I have come across children who have either witnessed their parents having sex and have been genuinely disturbed. Sometimes there have been instances where there have been class discussions and children become obsessed with experimenting and getting to know further. And how do you account for that?
Okay, so does anyone else want to, Pankti, would you
Sure.
want to?
Yes. I think that a couple of things that I would like to, one is just validate how they are feeling, empathize with how disturbing it could have been to see someone that they've looked up to their whole life engage in something that they may or may not know about. So I think it's important that we talk about the feeling aspect first, and then maybe understand a little bit about do they know what they were doing? So ask them to talk about what they saw, what they thought was happening, and to then clarify, saying that, if they don't have information about what sex looks like, to tell them that what sex looks like. Of course, this is also has to be done in an age appropriate manner. So based on their understanding, if this is something that they can even fathom. So at that, having such a discussion with them, and to also let them know if they are, I know that when we are working with children as professionals, we also speak, we can also speak with parents directly, or we can encourage children to speak with parents directly. So in that case, I would also want a little bit of intervention at a parental level, where us as professionals can let them know that, maybe this is something that has happened. Maybe they can be more mindful about their privacy, etc. But really, I would just honestly engage in a conversation with the child, and to give that child proper information and to validate their feelings. I hope that answers your question.
Generally, these are very private issues between couples.
Yeah.
So an outsider talking does not impact as much as it does when the family itself talks about it. And parents are not very comfortable talking about it. Secondly, they are not informed about it. And they feel that they don't need to talk about it.
Yeah.
So that those are issues that are causing children to get more obsessed with sex and experimenting with it.
Yeah, we agree with you, which is what we hope to do, which is what that, most of our sessions lately have been with adults, so that they become comfortable talking about this, so that they can address shame that they feel themselves before even speaking with a child. But yeah, these are very real challenges, especially in our context, given our culture and
Right.
society, etc. Yeah, it's
There's
a challenge.
another question that I need to ask. May I jump the queue, or is anyone waiting?
No, please.
You see, post-COVID, one has noticed that there's a lot of preoccupation amongst young people with the LGBTQ movement. Is there any information that can be passed on to the children? Because some of them have begun to believe that they are lesbians, or some of them have begun to believe that they are bisexuals. And is there any way we can help them?
Definitely. I think just want to reiterate that we do have resources on our website which can help facilitate these conversations. And, as you rightly said, I think we've also seen it in movies and media nowadays there's a lot of representation from that community.
Exactly.
And I know that there's a myth such as okay, if I watch a movie which shows a gay relationship, means that I'm going to, and if I like that movie, does that mean I am gay? So those kind of questions, curiosities, myths do exist, and we can inform ourselves and children with the knowledge. So there is a lot of information there on the internet, which again we've curated on our website. But you can also feel free, if it's something that you cannot access, feel free. You can write to us, and we can get back to you as well.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, we also do conduct workshops specifically addressing sexuality aspect, or understanding gender, understanding sexuality. And the reason for doing that is precisely because a lot of people have questions and curiosities, and they are in that there is no one age to figure out your sexuality. right? So people can have questions when they are, say, I don't know, 5, 6 years old, or they can have questions when they're 50 or 60 years old. And so we do like to have these conversations, and we wish to have this conversation with all sorts of age groups in that space, so that they know at least where to ask and look for, which is what we also asked in the poll question, that people may have questions that they just wish they had someone to talk to. And they did. And so we also hope to become one of those people that people can come and talk to and ask these questions. And then maybe, we can expand that network for them even further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have one more question from
Anju.
Atmadeep, and we skipped him on his second question. So I'm going to get back to him, and then I'm going to get back to Anju and Jyotima. Pradeep, please go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you so much for actually discussing that. And as far as therapy and everything is concerned, in my own opinion, I feel most therapists don't even know the Q of QACP, and which is something I feel is very important. And that aside, when it comes to minors, people below 18 in our country, Karnataka recently banned the sale of condoms and contraceptives to minors. So there is a tricky aspect to it, right? The tricky aspect being that when somebody is pregnant, or uh, contracts an STI, God forbid, like, although it's not like a problem, but yeah, but nobody wants to. So when you access healthcare, they are mandated by POSCO to report such cases, which is extremely problematic. And as someone who has engaged in sexual acts as a minor, I say this as engaged because even now that I'm a consenting adult, I feel like I was okay with it, but there is something that I feel isn't necessarily a umbrella statement that I would like to make. So because again, the age of consent varies from country to country. How do you navigate that road? So when it comes to condoms, contraception, and sex, and these things in general, what is the roadmap ahead, or how can these things be better understood when it comes to minors?
I think, this is something that we have. I mean, honestly, it's also been very, very stressful and frustrating for us when there are laws in place which are not entirely addressing the ground reality of what teenage desires are, how they are interested in exploring, etc. And to add, what you mentioned about the Karnataka ban on the sale of condoms and contraceptives to minors, for us it's a step back. I'm not saying that we promote minors to go and have sex, no, but I think there has to be a dialogue that needs to be entered into with these minors who have a lot of questions, desires, curiosities, so they can understand what they are experiencing, right? Sex is not just a physical act. There is also an emotional and a mental component attached to it. There's also responsibility attached to it that needs to be, that where they need to be made aware of. And which is why we do we are in the process of having a couple of petitions, and we are really hoping that our education system do inculcate comprehensive sex ed in the curriculum, so that more children have access to this kind of information, which doesn't have a lot of moral or ethical component to it, where it's all hush, etc. I know that it's a very long discussion that we don't have enough time for right now, so I'm gonna I'm just gonna limit my answer to that. But thank you so much for bringing up such a relevant point. We have other questions, I think.
Yes, I'll ask Krishna or Dada to unmute. Just
Yeah,
okay.
morning all of you. This is Dr. Krishna from Hyderabad. I'm working with 6,000 women smallholder farming communities. We are empowering and enhance the capacities of the women and gender issues. Recently, I participated in one workshop of the women in one university here. The outcome of that workshop and the women expressed, women who are leading like leaders of the women leaders are motivating women into do sex. Women into sex. That is one stigma we found in that workshop. When I after completion of this workshop, I came out. Generally, I used to travel in the public transport. I met one girl in bus stop. Is this so-and-so number bus will stop here or not? Very bravely, that girl child answered, "Yes, sir. The bus will come. I can tell you where you have to drop." That is one surprising thing I received answer from that girl. When I entered the bus, I just asked one girl, 8th class girl, where are you going? I'm going to my home. Where is our home? That home is 30 kilometers from that school. Regularly, she is traveling in the bus. How it? She said, nothing. I'm very brave girl, sir, because in this bus regularly up and down, 50 to 60 people are traveling along with me. That is the strength of this community. I am very much enjoying traveling school to home. And this is the thing I wanted to share with you, the empowerment of the girls and the stigma among the women leaders, how they are pushing their co-women into sexual activities. I was so sad. That is the reason. I'm doctorate in women's studies from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. This is my 30 years long journey with women.
Sir, what was your question? Because the speakers need to leave in a few minutes.
No, it's not question. I wanted to give some message. How girls are very brave in this society.
True. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's good that you're putting what is happening in the society out, so that we know how to deal with these issues. We can at least examine.
Yeah, two differences I'm talking. Girls, how they are empowered, and how these adult women are pushing other women into do sexual activities.
Right.
That is my worry. That's it.
Okay. Next question from Ms. Anju, please. Please unmute yourself. Yeah. Anju, yes.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
A very good morning to all of you. And it was really great to have WishwaTalks as well as the Torch for Wear Foundation. And I have recently done my CAHC and so correlate to the topic that is for the adolescent health specifically, because the education definitely it is the need. But I wanted to understand that there is definitely a gender discrimination is already there, right? And how can we can bifurcate and teach that women should not have a sexual desires or something? Man is having it, but women cannot have it. This is also considered, you have to make them understand this also, that the emotions are, whether it is sadness, whether it is happiness, whether it is absolutely towards related to the sex, that is also there. So we need to inculcate. And
Yes.
in our education system, the life skills,
So ma'am, what is your question? What is your question?
how we would try to inculcate this concept.
Your voice is not audible. Your voice is not audible. There's a lot of disturbance.
How would we be able to inculcate this? The emotion, the sexual emotions in the females should not be there.
There's a lot of disturbance, ma'am.
I think I
A lot of
understood
disturbance.
I think
How the emotions can be there in the women, sexual emotions can be there or not. Discrimination is there, definitely there.
I think I got your question, and I think that is precisely what we are talking about. That is precisely what we are trying to do in normalizing sexual desire, normalizing sexual activity for all genders. And what you're stating also is a myth, right? It is part of this gender stereotype that, oh, women don't have sexual desire and are supposed to be these, you know, asexual beings that are only there for men, which is absolutely false. And that is precisely what we are trying to do, is to normalize how all genders have sexual desires in varying capacities. It is an individual subjective experience. There are people who are asexual who may not have experienced sexual desire in the same way. But that doesn't include an entire section of society, like, you know, all women don't. That's nonsense. And that's exactly what we are trying to normalize by creating more awareness, by having these conversations. I think that is one of the ways in which this can be addressed.
I do want to jump in here that Rishi has shared his email ID in the comments. So when we say that what we're trying to have these conversations, like we do sessions particularly addressing these topics, and the population that we work is with like we said, like children aged from say 3 to 5 to adults of like age is no bar essentially. So if you believe that these are conversations that you'd like to have in detail, you have a population that you would want us to sort of have this conversation with, or you know, you have specific queries just for us also, like we'd be happy to sort of take that up as well post this session as well.
Ma'am, one last question. I would like to ask, what about people who have been abused as children? Just to close the whole program, I would like to ask this last question. How do they deal with situations?
Okay. I believe you're talking about adult survivors of child sexual abuse. And yeah, I think again, for them to understand what they went through, I think reaching out to a professional or speaking to a trusted, reliable source, whether it's a friend or anyone, where they can actually process what happened, what impact it has had on them. Again, there are also resources that we have for this on the website. But yeah, I think we do believe that reaching out to a professional and talking about their experience is certainly one of the first things that we would encourage them to do. Okay,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
With this, we will close the session. Thank you once again, Ms. Sanya Mehra, Rishi Talwar, Pankti Goyal, and all the participants. You all have been awesome in dealing with such a sensitive issue, so well handled, and with each one coming up with very relevant questions and very pertinent questions to the current times. Thank you so much. With this, I would just like to say the upcoming talk in Vishwa is on education. It's by Srutoshini Foundation. The speaker's name is Juin Datta. She's been working with underprivileged kids. She'll be sharing her journey of starting an educational institution for underprivileged kids. Please be there for the next event. Thank you so much. With this, we close.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
I'd like to request everyone to write their queries to Torchbearers Foundation. And thank you for joining us today.